She took a simple selfie with her dog on a scenic cliff trail and vanished hours later. Now her golden retriever is found alone, barking desperately at the edge, the leash trailing in the wind. Her brother refuses to believe it was an accident. What begins as a search for answers quickly unravels into a chilling investigation, one that exposes buried town secrets, silent conspiracies, and a darkness hiding behind familiar faces. Before we get started, please write, where are you watching this video from? Emily inhaled deeply, savoring the crisp, salt-infused air that danced gently around her, rustling through the tall grasses lining the cliff trail. The sun was warm but soft, painting golden strokes across the landscape as afternoon stretched into evening. This had always been her favorite spot, high above the waves, a place where sky and ocean blurred into a mesmerizing blue infinity. "Come on, Max," she called cheerfully, patting her thigh. Her golden retriever, Max, bounded toward her enthusiastically, his fluffy tail wagging with pure joy. His soft eyes gleamed with unconditional trust as he nudged affectionately against her leg. "Good boy," Emily smiled, ruffling his silky fur. Pausing at the trail's edge, she took out her phone. She adjusted her hair quickly, turning her face slightly toward the sun to catch the best angle. "Smile, buddy." Emily leaned closer, her cheek pressing softly against Max's head, capturing their joyful moment against the backdrop of shimmering waves far below. Click. She checked the photo. Perfect. Her eyes sparkled, her smile genuine and carefree. Quickly, Emily opened her chat with her brother Luke, attaching the selfie and typing a quick, teasing caption. "Wish you were here instead of stuck behind your boring desk." Luke responded instantly. Rubbing in again. "Stay safe out there. Love you." She smiled warmly, feeling a sudden tug of nostalgia. Luke had always been her protector, her confidant. Despite their playful teasing, the bond between them ran deep. Emily slid her phone back in her pocket, adjusting her backpack straps. "Let's get moving, Max. We've got a trail to finish." The pair continued along the narrow path, Max occasionally darting forward, chasing the fleeting shadows of seabirds. The path wound upward gently, hugged tightly by sparse shrubs and clusters of wildflowers swaying softly in the breeze. Emily felt alive here, the solitude of nature bringing clarity to her chaotic thoughts. But gradually, an uneasy feeling prickled at the edges of her awareness, like a subtle shadow drifting across the sun. Emily stopped, glancing over her shoulder. The trail was empty, quiet except for the distant murmur of waves crashing against rock. She frowned slightly, dismissing her sudden unease as mere imagination. Still, the sense of being watched lingered faintly, like a whispered warning. "Come on, Max," she said softly, urging herself forward. The feeling passed quickly, leaving only calmness behind. The path curved closer to the cliff edge, offering breathtaking, dizzying views of the jagged coastline below. Time seemed to melt away as Emily absorbed the beauty around her, pausing occasionally to snap photos. Evening shadows stretched longer, deepening the blues and grays of the landscape. "Almost there, buddy," she murmured gently, looking forward to reaching the summit. Hours later, twilight had swallowed the sun completely, painting the sky a deep shade of indigo. The tranquility of the cliffside was shattered by desperate, frantic barking echoing along the empty trail. Two hikers, heading back from the viewpoint, quickened their pace toward the distressing sound. Nearing the cliff edge, they found a golden retriever barking frantically, pacing back and forth, clearly agitated. "Hey boy, what's wrong?" One hiker approached gently. Max whined anxiously, his brown eyes wide and pleading. He glanced repeatedly down toward the steep cliff edge, pawing nervously at the dirt. Peering cautiously over the precipice, the hikers felt a chill creep through their bones. There was nothing below but darkness and the relentless roar of waves crashing violently against rock. There was no sign of Emily. The ringing startled Luke, snapping him from the monotonous rhythm of typing reports at his cluttered desk. He glanced at the screen, Mom calling. Strange, he thought, frowning as he picked up the phone. "Hey Mom, what's—" "Luke, Emily's missing." His mother's voice was shrill, shaking violently through the phone. Panic laced every syllable, instantly plunging his heart into ice-cold dread. "Mom, slow down," Luke urged, his pulse already racing. "What do you mean, missing?" "She was hiking on the cliff trail with Max. They found Max, but Emily's just gone." "Oh God. Luke, they can't find her anywhere." Luke's world tilted sharply. His hands trembled as he stood abruptly, gripping the phone so tightly it hurt. "I'll be there as soon as I can. Just hold tight, okay?" The drive was torturous, his thoughts spiraling wildly. The image of Emily's bright, carefree smile in that selfie, sent just hours earlier, haunted him like a cruel taunt. She was fine. She had to be fine. When he finally arrived at the trailhead, the usually tranquil place was transformed into a scene of urgency. Police cars lined the narrow parking lot, blue and red lights swirling silently against the trees. Officers and volunteers moved purposefully through the area, their voices tense but controlled. His parents stood at the edge of the commotion, clinging desperately to each other. Luke hurried over, embracing them tightly, feeling their fragile bodies trembling beneath his grip. "Have they found anything?" he asked urgently. His father, Michael, shook his head numbly. "Only her phone, smashed to pieces down by the rocks." His voice broke, and Luke saw an unfamiliar vulnerability in his father's eyes usually so stern and steady. Detective Sarah Jennings approached, her sharp gaze assessing Luke carefully before extending a hand. "Mr. Carter, I'm Detective Jennings. I understand Emily sent you a selfie earlier today." "Yes," Luke replied shakily. "She seemed fine, happy. You think someone could have taken her?" Jennings hesitated slightly, her voice careful and practiced. "We're considering all possibilities, but given the location, a tragic accident or possibly something intentional. Well, we can't rule it out." Luke's stomach clenched painfully. "Intentional? You mean suicide?" "No, absolutely not. Emily wouldn't." "Luke," Jennings gently interrupted, meeting his distressed eyes firmly. "I understand it's difficult, but we have to consider every possibility. Did Emily have any struggles lately? Personal issues?" "No," Luke said forcefully, though uncertainty nagged at him. "She was happy. She loved her life. This doesn't make sense." His mother sobbed softly into Michael's shoulder, her quiet grief stabbing Luke deeper than any words. Jennings noted something quickly, her pen scratching subtly in a leather-bound notebook. "What exactly did her messages to you say?" Jennings pressed. Luke pulled out his phone, feeling sick as he handed it over. Jennings examined the messages briefly, her expression unreadable. "And no other unusual contact today?" Luke paused. "I don't think so. But what do you mean by unusual?" Jennings hesitated again, her expression guarded. "People in distress sometimes reach out unexpectedly or exhibit subtle signs of trouble. Emily wasn't distressed," Luke insisted, his voice thick with frustration. "She was joking with me. She just wouldn't leave Max behind, not like that." The detective nodded sympathetically, handing back Luke's phone. "We'll continue searching and keep you informed. Please stay close by." Luke nodded numbly, feeling utterly helpless as Jennings moved back toward her colleagues. His mother squeezed his hand tightly. "Luke, she's wrong," she whispered fiercely, her eyes swollen yet determined. "Emily would never hurt herself. There has to be something else." He nodded again, desperately clinging to that belief. But doubt had begun to gnaw at the edges of his thoughts, fraying the edges of hope. Hours passed excruciatingly slowly. Searchlights cut through the gathering darkness, illuminating nothing but the emptiness of the cliffside. Eventually, exhausted rescuers trudged back, their expressions grim and defeated. Luke slumped onto a nearby bench, his heart heavy and aching. Around him, whispers floated softly, words of sympathy, theories about Emily's fate, all blurring in a white noise. But he couldn't accept any of it. Something else had happened, something everyone was missing. "I won't accept it." Luke's voice cracked through the heavy silence in his parents' dimly lit living room, each word strained with raw emotion. He paced restlessly, fists clenched in frustration. "Emily would never hurt herself. Never. You both know it." His mother, Susan, dabbed at swollen eyes with a crumpled tissue. Her voice was weak, barely audible. "Luke, we don't want to believe it either. But the police, the detective." "Jennings is wrong," Luke interrupted sharply, bitterness edging into his tone. He turned toward his father, Michael, who sat rigidly in his favorite worn recliner, face drawn tight with tension. "Dad, tell her Emily wouldn't do this." Michael sighed heavily, his gaze fixed on some distant point beyond the room. Silence hung thickly, oppressive and filled with unspoken words. Finally, he spoke, his voice low, strained. "Luke, there were things Emily didn't tell you. Arguments we had recently." Luke stared, stunned. "Arguments? About what?" Michael rubbed his forehead wearily. "It's complicated. She was upset about things from the past, mistakes I'd made, decisions I thought were long settled." "Like what?" Luke pressed, suspicion stirring uncomfortably in his gut. "What were you fighting about?" His father looked away, a flicker of shame crossing his features. "She accused me of lying about what happened years ago on the cliff trails. The old accidents. She wanted me to reopen old wounds, publicly acknowledge things. Things I'd buried deep for a reason." Susan's gaze darted anxiously between her husband and son, clearly shaken. "Michael, this isn't the time." "No, Mom, it's exactly the time," Luke insisted sharply, his heart pounding with a mixture of dread and anger. "What did Emily find out?" Michael shifted uncomfortably. "She'd been looking through old files, reports. She thought I hid something. But everything I did was to protect us, protect this family." Luke shook his head, disbelief etched clearly across his face. "Protect us from what?" "From the past. From the pain of knowing the truth. There was negligence, people got hurt, and there was blame enough for everyone. I thought the town had moved on. Emily wouldn't leave it alone." Luke felt like the air had been knocked from his lungs. He'd always known his father as a pillar of strength, unwavering and dependable. Now that image fractured before him, leaving him unsettled and anxious. "Dad, if she was digging into something dangerous, maybe someone else was involved. Maybe Emily stumbled on something she shouldn't have." Michael's eyes widened briefly, fear flashing clearly across his tired face. "You don't think someone harmed her because of me?" Luke swallowed, voice tight with pain. "I don't know, Dad. But whatever Emily uncovered, it might be why she's missing. And if you're hiding anything else, I need to know now." Michael stared silently, unable or unwilling to speak further. Susan placed a gentle hand on Luke's shoulder, trying to steady him. "Luke, please. Your father's trying his best." Luke pulled away, turning to leave. If he was truly trying his best, maybe Emily wouldn't be missing. He stormed upstairs, his footsteps heavy with frustration and anguish. Entering Emily's bedroom felt wrong somehow, like invading a sacred space. The room was untouched, preserved in Emily's cheerful, yet slightly chaotic style. Polaroids strung casually across the wall, vibrant paintings leaning against her desk, journals stacked beside her laptop. He sank onto the edge of her bed, reaching instinctively for her computer. As it powered on, Luke hesitated, his fingers trembling as guilt and doubt surged within him. But the ache of not knowing pushed him forward. Luke opened Emily's cloud backup, scrolling anxiously through recent documents and messages. Among routine files, photos, work notes, half-written poetry, he suddenly found a folder labeled simply, Truth. Inside were fragmented notes and screenshots of cryptic messages Emily had exchanged anonymously. Unknown sender. They won't let you get away with exposing them. Emily, I can't keep quiet anymore. People deserve the truth. Unknown sender. Be careful. They're watching. Luke's blood turned to ice. He clicked further, stumbling onto emails Emily had started drafting but never sent, detailing suspicions of threats from someone powerful in town, someone who wanted her silenced. A chill settled deeply over Luke. Emily hadn't been suicidal. She'd been afraid. Terrified, yet determined. Her recent brightness, her careful smile in the selfie, had it been masking fear? He closed the laptop abruptly, heart racing. Detective Jennings needed to see this immediately. His family's dark secret was more dangerous than he'd imagined, and Emily had been caught in the crossfire. Luke glanced toward his parents' bedroom door, doubt gnawing at him again. Who had his father truly angered? And was Michael more involved than he admitted? In that moment, Luke realized that finding Emily wasn't just about bringing her home. It was about confronting the ghosts haunting his family, no matter the cost. The glow of Luke's laptop screen illuminated his face, casting ghostly shadows in the darkness of Emily's bedroom. He had barely slept, obsessively scouring every digital footprint his sister left behind, desperate for clues hidden in plain sight. Her cheerful Instagram feed, once filled with photos of bright sunsets, hiking trails, and Max's playful antics, now felt eerie and haunting. As dawn seeped through the curtains, Luke rubbed tired eyes and stared blankly at the endless cascade of comments beneath Emily's last posts. Sympathy, prayers, shock, messages from friends and strangers alike blurred together. He sighed heavily, nearly closing the page, when a single comment caught his attention. "Beautiful spot, but watch your step. Easy to fall." The emoji sent an involuntary chill down his spine. Luke leaned closer, clicking on the commenter's profile, Cliffwatcher88. The account was private, with no profile photo and barely any followers, a perfect mask for anonymity. Luke's pulse quickened. Scrolling back through Emily's posts, he found the same user repeatedly liking photos and occasionally dropping cryptic messages. "Careful out there. Accidents happen quickly. Interesting choice of trail. Lonely place. Who are you?" Luke muttered to himself, fingers trembling slightly. He felt sick. How had Emily not noticed this earlier? Or had she simply dismissed it, laughing off a random troll? He grabbed his phone and quickly dialed Detective Jennings. She answered briskly, irritation evident beneath forced politeness. "Yes, Mr. Carter. I found something. An account commenting weird stuff on Emily's posts. Cryptic warnings, almost threats. Username's Cliffwatcher88. This might be something." Jennings paused briefly, voice measured. "Luke, we've already examined her social media. Nothing indicated foul play. People make strange comments online all the time, especially after tragedies. It's probably just someone trolling." "You're not taking this seriously." Luke snapped, frustration rising sharply. What if Emily knew this person? Or what if they'd been following her? Jennings sighed audibly. "Grief can distort things, Luke. Trust me, I understand." "No, you clearly don't," Luke interrupted, anger mixing with desperation. "I'm telling you, Emily was afraid of something. She wasn't suicidal. These aren't random trolls." The detective's tone softened slightly. "We'll look into it again, but please, step back for a bit. Let us handle this professionally." Luke hung up without responding, his throat tight with frustration. Jennings wouldn't listen. None of them would. Not until it was too late. He stared at the mysterious profile again, determination hardening inside him. If the police wouldn't dig deeper, he would. Luke spent the morning meticulously combing through online platforms, Facebook, Twitter, even obscure forums, hoping for traces of Cliffwatcher88 elsewhere. Each empty lead heightened his anxiety, but eventually, he discovered a forum thread dedicated to hiking incidents in the local area. There, amidst concerned locals and amateur sleuths, a user named Cliffwatcher frequently contributed detailed information about past disappearances. The posts were unnervingly specific, hinting at intimate knowledge about incidents dating back several years. One post read chillingly, "People underestimate cliffs. It's easy to stage an accident. Nobody ever suspects foul play." Luke felt nauseous. Whoever this person was, they clearly relished discussing tragedy. Worse still, they seemed intimately familiar with the very place Emily vanished. Luke hesitated briefly, then quickly registered a fake account and sent a private message to Cliffwatcher. "Interested in your theories. Do you think recent disappearances were accidents or planned?" He leaned back, heart thudding, fully aware of the risk he was taking. Almost immediately, a reply appeared. "Depends who's asking." Luke typed back cautiously, choosing his words carefully. "Someone who lost a friend recently. Emily Carter." A pause. Painful, excruciating silence that stretched endlessly. Then finally another reply. "Ah, Emily. Curious case. Meet me at the old ranger's cabin near the cliff trail tonight at 9. Come alone." Luke's blood froze. He knew the old cabin. Isolated, abandoned, shrouded by thick woodland. It felt dangerous, but also necessary. His phone buzzed suddenly, Detective Jennings calling back. Luke ignored it, eyes fixed on the screen. This was his chance, perhaps his only one, to get closer to the truth. Darkness had already engulfed the isolated woods by the time Luke parked his car near the abandoned ranger's cabin. Every shadow seemed to move. Every rustling leaf magnified his fear, but his desperation to find Emily outweighed his caution. The cold, heavy silence pressed down around him, broken only by the muffled crunch of twigs beneath his feet as he approached the dilapidated structure. The cabin stood forgotten, its wooden walls weathered and warped by time. The windows were dark, empty sockets and a skeletal face, staring blankly at the wilderness surrounding it. Luke took a breath, steeling himself, and stepped forward. Inside, the gloom was oppressive, broken only by slivers of moonlight piercing through cracks in the walls. Suddenly, a figure shifted in the corner. Luke froze, adrenaline surging. "You came alone," a quiet, anxious voice murmured from the shadows. "Yes. Who are you?" Luke's voice trembled slightly despite his effort to sound firm. The figure moved into the faint moonlight. Luke recognized him instantly, Jake Anderson. A quiet, withdrawn man Luke had occasionally seen in town, always on the periphery, barely noticed. Now Jake looked smaller, fragile, eyes hollow with anxiety. "Jake, you're Cliff Watcher, 88. Luke asked incredulously, uncertainty flooding through him. Jake didn't seem dangerous, just deeply troubled. Jake shifted nervously. "Yes. I'm sorry for the secrecy. After your sister disappeared, I couldn't just stand by. I had to warn people." "Warn them? About what?" Jake's eyes flickered away, unable to hold Luke's stare. "That spot, where Emily vanished. It's cursed. Or rather, someone made it cursed." Luke felt a chill seep into his bones. "What do you mean, someone?" "My sister, Anna. She disappeared there 5 years ago," Jake admitted quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. His hands trembled slightly as he rubbed them together, as though haunted by memories. "Same cliff. Same circumstances. People said it was an accident, a suicide, but I knew Hannah better than anyone. Just like you know Emily. Neither of them would have jumped." Luke took a cautious step closer, empathy momentarily eclipsing suspicion. "Jake, what exactly did Emily want from you?" Jake hesitated, visibly wrestling with himself. "She found me about 2 weeks ago. She'd been digging into past disappearances around town. Emily thought there was a connection between my sister's disappearance and others from years before. She'd uncovered something people wanted hidden." "People like who?" Luke pressed urgently, his heartbeat quickening. Jake exhaled shakily, visibly distressed. "I don't know names. Emily thought powerful people were covering things up, town officials, prominent citizens. She was scared. She knew too much," she said. "They started threatening her online, like they threatened Hannah." "Why didn't you go to the police?" Luke asked sharply, frustration edging his tone. "Because I tried before," Jake replied bitterly, eyes glistening with pain. "When Hannah vanished, no one believed me. Detective Jennings was assigned then, too. She dismissed it as grief-talking, paranoia. The same way she's dismissing your fears now." Luke's jaw tightened angrily. It explained Jennings's stubborn skepticism. "So why meet me now?" Jake hesitated, guilt flickering across his face. "Because I saw your messages on the forum, saw you struggling the way I did years ago. And Emily trusted me enough to come to me. I owed her more than silence." Luke studied Jake carefully. There was no deception, only raw pain and lingering trauma in the man's weary expression. "Did Emily mention anyone else specifically? Any clue at all?" "She showed me notes, records she'd found of negligence, old police reports hidden away. She was going to confront someone important, someone your father knew personally." Jake's eyes darkened. "She seemed sure your father was hiding something crucial." Luke swallowed hard, dread pooling in his stomach. "My father made mistakes. But covering up something that serious? Emily believed that." Jake nodded slowly. "She was desperate to expose the truth. Said if anything happened to her, I should find you. She trusted you, Luke." Luke felt an unbearable ache tightening his chest. Emily had been fighting alone, scared and burdened by secrets. His gaze hardened with resolve. "We need to keep digging, Jake. Whatever Emily uncovered, it's still out there." Jake looked uneasy. "Whoever is behind this, if they find out we're digging." Luke cut him off firmly. "They've taken enough already. I won't lose Emily too. Not without fighting." A flicker of reluctant courage lit Jake's eyes. "Then you're not alone." Luke and Jake sat silently in a corner booth of an all-night diner on the outskirts of town, untouched cups of lukewarm coffee sitting between them. The harsh fluorescent lights painted everything in a cold, unforgiving glow, illuminating Jake's pale, strained face as he unfolded a worn folder stuffed with yellowed newspaper clippings, handwritten notes, and faded photographs. My sister Hannah disappeared on October 9th, exactly 5 years ago. Jake began, his voice strained. He spread out several newspaper articles on the tabletop, each one detailing a young woman's mysterious disappearance from the same cliffside trail. Hannah's smiling face stared up from one faded picture, heartbreakingly innocent. Luke picked up a clipping, skimming the text with a growing sense of dread. Authorities rule out foul play, citing possible accidental fall. Sounds familiar, he muttered bitterly. Jake nodded grimly. Except Hannah wasn't suicidal, and neither was Emily. People in town whispered, calling Hannah unstable because of grief after her mom died. No one believed me when I said someone was targeting her. Did Hannah mention receiving any threats? Luke asked gently, sensing Jake's growing agitation. Jake hesitated, visibly upset. She got strange messages online days before she vanished. Anonymous, threatening. They warned her to stop digging, or something terrible would happen. I told Detective Jennings back then, but she brushed it off as trolling. Just like with Emily. Luke's fists clenched in frustration. It's the same pattern. Anonymous threats, warnings, then disappearance. Someone's orchestrating this. Jake slid another piece of paper toward Luke. A printout of an online message Hannah received shortly before she vanished. Unknown sender. You're in dangerous territory. People vanish all the time. Keep quiet if you want to stay safe. Luke's blood ran cold. Emily got messages exactly like this. It can't be coincidence. Whoever did this is still out there. Jake's eyes glistened painfully. They never even seriously investigated Hannah's disappearance. Jennings just said she probably slipped. But that trail, it's not difficult. Not where they found her backpack. It made no sense. Suddenly, the diner door swung open. Luke glanced up sharply, recognizing Detective Jennings entering with weary purpose. Their eyes met, and after a brief hesitation, Jennings approached their table cautiously. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, a hint of unease in her normally steady voice. Luke reluctantly nodded, gesturing to an empty chair. Jennings sat down heavily, glancing at the spread of documents. "Revisiting old ghosts, Jake?" Jake tensed, bitter resentment coloring his tone. "Someone has to, Detective, especially since no one listened before." Jennings sighed, briefly lowering her defenses. "Look, after our last conversation, Luke, I started revisiting Emily's online interactions. You were right. There are disturbing parallels between her and Hannah's cases. Both received threats. Both disappeared from the exact same spot, 5 years apart. We can't ignore the possibility of a serial offender." Luke's frustration eased slightly at Jennings' acknowledgement. "So you finally believe us?" Jennings rubbed her temples tiredly. "I don't know what to believe yet, but I'm starting to see a pattern. Emily wasn't suicidal. Her cloud backups clearly show fear, not despair. I've requested files on older cases. But if someone influential is covering something up, it won't be easy." Jake exhaled heavily, relief mixing with lingering resentment. "It's about time someone took this seriously." Luke stared intently at Jennings. "You said influential people. Who in this town has the power to suppress investigations?" Jennings hesitated, considering carefully before answering. "Officially, I can't speculate. Unofficially, your father's name came up repeatedly in old reports, Luke. Michael Carter oversaw safety measures on the cliff trails back when several incidents occurred. Reports of negligence surfaced, but evidence vanished before anything could be proven." Luke's chest tightened painfully. His father's role was becoming increasingly sinister. First Emily's accusations, now Jennings' suspicions. So Emily might have stumbled onto something my father did. Or covered up? Possibly, Jennings admitted reluctantly. Or someone using his past negligence as leverage. Either way, she was silenced for it. Jake leaned forward, voice hardening with determination. "Hannah deserved better than silence. Emily deserves better. If Michael Carter is involved, even indirectly, we need the truth." Luke nodded firmly, despite the sickening dread pooling inside him. Facing the possibility of his father's complicity hurt deeply, yet it strengthened his resolve. Jennings gathered the documents, standing abruptly. I'll keep investigating discreetly, but tread carefully. If powerful people are behind this, they'll do anything to protect themselves. Rain pounded heavily against the windows, matching the turbulent storm inside Luke's chest as he parked outside his parents' house. He gripped the steering wheel tightly, heart pounding with a mixture of anger and dread. Facing Detective Jennings' accusations was painful enough, but confronting his father directly filled him with a profound, anxious fear he'd never felt before. He found Michael alone in his study, the dim lamplight illuminating a man Luke barely recognized. His father appeared older, weary, hunched over stacks of old documents with haunted eyes. "Dad," Luke said, voice steady but strained, drawing Michael's startled attention. "We need to talk now." Michael stiffened visibly, quickly shuffling papers out of sight, guilt etched plainly on his face. "Luke, it's late. It can't wait." Luke stepped closer, barely containing his fury. "I've spoken to Detective Jennings. And Jake Anderson." Michael's eyes widened sharply at Jake's name, panic flickering briefly. "Luke, listen, whatever they've told you, there's more to it." "Then tell me," Luke demanded sharply, interrupting him. "Emily's missing, Dad. Possibly because she knew about your involvement in covering up accidents on the trails. She was afraid, and now she's gone. What exactly did you do?" Michael sank heavily into his chair, the fight leaving his body entirely. "It was never supposed to end like this," he murmured, eyes downcast. "All I wanted was to protect this family, our reputation, our future." Luke swallowed hard, voice barely above a whisper. "Protect us from what?" His father sighed deeply, shame clouding his features. 20 years ago, I was overseeing safety measures for the town's hiking trails. Budgets were tight, and some trails, including the cliff trail, weren't maintained properly. There were accidents, serious ones. We covered them up to avoid liability." Luke's anger surged hotly, his voice trembling. "People died because of that negligence. You hid from everyone." Michael didn't meet his eyes, nodding painfully. "I convinced myself it was for the greater good. We made quiet settlements, buried police reports, paid off victims' families. Over time, it became easier to pretend it never happened. But someone didn't forget." Luke pressed sharply. "Emily discovered everything, didn't she? That's why you two argued." Michael rubbed his forehead tiredly, voice shaking. "Yes. Emily found old reports, evidence I kept hidden in the attic. She confronted me, furious. She wanted justice, public apologies, reparations. She threatened to go public." Luke stared at his father in disbelief, the pieces finally aligning. "And then someone started threatening her. And you." Michael nodded weakly, eyes haunted. "It started anonymously, a letter in the mailbox, then emails, texts. They demanded I confess publicly, threatened to hurt Emily if I didn't cooperate. I panicked. I told Emily to stop digging, hoping it would blow over. But she wouldn't back down." Luke's voice was bitter, accusatory. "You should have protected her, Dad, not silenced her." "I was scared, Luke." Michael shouted suddenly, anguish raw in his voice. "I thought it was just intimidation. I never believed anyone would really harm her." The room fell painfully silent, the truth hanging heavily between them. Luke felt a profound ache in his chest, mourning the father he thought he knew, grieving the trust now shattered irreparably. "You realize Emily's disappearance is directly tied to this, don't you?" Luke said quietly, forcing Michael to meet his gaze. Michael's eyes glistened with tears, his composure utterly broken. "I would give anything to change it now. Emily was braver than I ever was. She deserved better from me." Luke stepped back, shaking his head slowly. "We have to give everything to Detective Jennings. Every scrap of evidence, every threat, everything. It might be our only chance at finding Emily alive." Michael hesitated briefly, then finally nodded, resignation overtaking fear. "If it brings Emily home, I'll face whatever consequences come." Luke's voice softened slightly. "Emily didn't hate you, Dad. She just wanted the truth to matter more than our comfort." Michael's shoulders shook silently. "She was right. But the truth comes with a price." Luke stared out the rain-streaked window, the relentless downpour obscuring the darkness beyond. He realized bitterly that the threats weren't just about silencing Emily. They were about burying truths that powerful people desperately wanted forgotten. His family had become tangled in something far bigger and darker than he'd ever imagined. Mist lingered heavily among the trees, wrapping the forest in an eerie, suffocating embrace. Luke's boots sank into the soft mud as he followed Jake toward an old, dilapidated shack hidden deep within the woods. Locals had mentioned a suspicious stranger frequenting the area recently, someone who seemed overly interested in the trails, particularly the cliffs. "Are you sure this is it?" Luke asked quietly, eyes scanning the run-down structure, barely visible in the shadowy forest. Jake nodded nervously, voice low. "This is the place. A hunter said he saw lights and movement around here, just days before Emily disappeared. Thought it was strange enough to mention." Luke hesitated, heart thumping painfully. The shack looked abandoned, forgotten, rotting wooden planks, a sagging roof, broken windows covered loosely with sheets of rusted metal. Yet something about its deliberate isolation sent a cold shiver crawling up his spine. Stepping carefully over splintered wood, Jake pushed open the creaking door. The inside was dark and musty, smelling sharply of mildew and decay. As Luke's eyes adjusted to the gloom, his pulse quickened. A crude table littered with empty cans, cigarette butts, and maps sprawled messily across its surface dominated the small space. Jake moved toward the maps, flashlight beam illuminating handwritten notes and photographs pinned haphazardly along the wall. Luke stepped closer, dread twisting in his gut. "These photos, they're all of the cliff trails," Jake muttered uneasily, fingers trembling as he traced the pathways marked with red ink. "And look here, timestamps and notes. Someone's been watching this area for months." Luke swallowed hard, eyes fixed on a particular image. A blurry photograph showed Emily and Max, clearly taken days before her disappearance. She was unaware, smiling, innocent. Luke's stomach churned violently. They were stalking her, Luke whispered, anger flaring alongside his fear. He traced notes hastily scribbled beneath the photo. EC. Alone. Usual route. Vulnerable. Suddenly, Jake stiffened beside him. "Luke, look at this." Jake pulled aside a heavy canvas tarp in the corner, revealing sophisticated surveillance equipment. High-powered binoculars, cameras, audio recording devices, aimed directly at the cliff trails below. The equipment was professional, precise, disturbingly purposeful. Whoever's behind this wasn't just stalking. They were planning carefully, meticulously. Jake said softly, dread coloring every word. Luke reached for a small notebook, lying abandoned on the table. Flipping through its pages, he felt his blood run cold. Detailed observations were carefully documented. Emily's daily routines, her conversations, habits, even notes on family tensions, all meticulously recorded by someone obsessed and dangerous. On the final page, Luke's breath caught in his throat. Scrawled hastily in angry letters was a chilling message. "It's done." Emily silenced. "No more digging. Trail closed." Luke's knees buckled slightly, and he steadied himself against the table. His sister's disappearance hadn't been an accident or tragic mistake. It had been deliberately orchestrated. Jake's eyes widened in horror as he read the note over Luke's shoulder. "We need to get this to Jennings immediately," he whispered urgently. Suddenly, outside the shack, a branch snapped sharply, startling them both. Luke's heart leaped into his throat. Jake quickly clicked off the flashlight, plunging them into darkness. The silence that followed was deafening, punctuated only by their shallow, tense breaths. Footsteps crunched softly closer through damp leaves, pausing just beyond the shack walls. Luke held his breath, frozen in place, muscles tight with adrenaline. Then, abruptly, the footsteps retreated, fading quickly into the woods. Luke exhaled shakily, turning to Jake with wide eyes. "They're still here, still watching," Jake whispered, panic rising sharply. Luke gathered the notebook and several photographs, shoving them quickly into his jacket pocket. "We need to get out of here now." They emerged cautiously from the shack, hearts pounding violently, senses heightened by fear. The woods remained silent, empty, but now the darkness felt alive, oppressive, malicious. Detective Sarah Jennings stood silently, studying the intricate map pinned across the police department's conference room wall. photographs, notes, and strings of yarn connected victims spanning decades, painting a horrifying pattern of hidden violence. Her face was set, jaw clenched tightly with a mixture of anger and determination as she gestured Luke closer. "I've reopened Emily's case officially," Jennings began, her voice firm and resolute. "The shack you and Jake found confirmed everything. Someone has been carefully targeting people for years, disguising murders as accidents or suicides." Luke stared at the photographs, heart hammering painfully in his chest. Young, smiling faces stared back at him, each one a life abruptly ended, their true stories silenced by negligence, corruption, and violence. Emily's photo now joined them, smiling innocently, oblivious to the danger that had shadowed her steps. "How many victims?" Luke asked quietly, dread heavy in his voice. Jennings exhaled slowly. "Officially, there were 12 unexplained disappearances or fatal accidents over the past 30 years along the cliff trails. But unofficially," her eyes darkened, "the numbers are likely higher. Too many cases were quietly dismissed without proper investigation. Dismissed because someone influential wanted them hidden." Luke swallowed hard, his voice bitter. "Someone like my father?" Jennings regarded him carefully, sympathy flickering briefly through her eyes. "Your father was involved in negligence and cover-ups, but he wasn't acting alone. Powerful people had a lot to lose if the truth ever came out. Trails generate tourism revenue, property values. Money and reputation were valued more highly than human life." Luke clenched his fists angrily. "So Emily died because someone was protecting their financial interests?" Jennings shook her head slowly. "It's deeper than greed alone. Whoever orchestrated these disappearances chose victims deliberately. People who uncover their secrets, who challenge their power. Victims who posed a threat." Luke stepped closer to the map, tracing connections with growing horror. Emily wasn't randomly chosen. She stumbled onto something huge, enough that they had to silence her permanently. Jennings nodded grimly. "Exactly. And whoever's behind this is meticulous, intelligent, and ruthless. They've hidden their tracks for decades, until now." Luke turned sharply, eyes fierce with determination. "We have enough to expose them publicly. The shack alone proves this was deliberate murder." Jennings hesitated, caution edging her voice. "Not yet. The shack proves foul play, but doesn't directly link a specific person to the crimes. Whoever this is, they're experienced in covering their tracks. We must tread carefully, gather irrefutable evidence, or they'll disappear again, untouchable." Luke's frustration boiled beneath his skin, but he knew Jennings was right. Hastily exposing partial truths would only warn their enemy, allowing them to retreat deeper into the shadows. "Then what's our next move?" Jennings turned back to the files, pulling a yellow document carefully from a dusty folder. "I've been digging through old archives. Almost every victim had reported receiving threats shortly before they vanished. Threats linked to exposure of negligence or corruption involving the trails. Emily and Hannah Anderson weren't isolated cases. They were part of a horrifying tradition of silencing." She laid out several documents, each page yellowed and brittle, detailing frantic reports victims had made to police or friends. Each report described anonymous threats, warnings to stop digging, messages filled with intimidation and violence. Luke's throat tightened painfully. "So, the same person, or group, has been terrorizing and silencing anyone who uncovers their secrets. But how have they avoided detection for so long?" "Connections," Jennings replied bitterly. "Wealthy landowners, local politicians, influential figures, all invested in the trails remaining profitable and open. Money bought silence, threats bought fear, and when that didn't work, murder removed obstacles." Luke's heart pounded as Jennings continued, her voice lowering seriously. "I suspect whoever leads this isn't done. With Emily's disappearance drawing attention again, they'll feel cornered. That makes them dangerous and desperate." Luke squared his shoulders, voice resolute despite lingering fear. "Good. Let them panic. That's when they'll make mistakes." Jennings regarded Luke quietly, respect flickering in her eyes. "We'll bring them down, Luke. But we need patience. And we need irrefutable proof." Luke nodded solemnly, understanding the gravity of her words. He glanced again at Emily's smiling face on the board, her innocence, her courage, the life cruelly stolen from her. His grief sharpened into fierce determination. He wouldn't rest until everyone responsible faced justice. The early morning air was sharp and bitterly cold as Luke pulled his jacket tightly around himself. Beside him, Detective Jennings adjusted her binoculars, watching carefully from their hidden vantage point overlooking the cliff trail. The landscape, so serene just weeks ago, now felt heavy with an unsettling presence. Another young woman, Lisa Monroe, had come forward just days earlier, frightened and pale, clutching printed copies of anonymous messages identical to those Emily had received. "You shouldn't be walking those cliffs alone, Lisa. Accidents happen. You're making enemies, asking questions. Be careful." The stalker was back, or had never left. Jennings lowered her binoculars slightly, exhaling slowly. "Lisa's bravery coming forward might give us the chance we need," she murmured softly, her voice tense with restrained anticipation. Luke nodded grimly. They had set up a careful surveillance operation along the trail, deploying hidden cameras and officers in plain clothes, ready to move quickly if anyone suspicious appeared. Yet, despite their preparations, anxiety twisted in Luke's gut. He knew firsthand how meticulous and cunning this person was. They'd been waiting since dawn, hidden in dense shrubs and foliage. Now, hours later, the tension had become nearly unbearable. "Think they'll really show?" Luke whispered skeptically, eyes fixed on the empty trail below. Jennings narrowed her gaze, unmoving. "They're arrogant, Luke. Decades of evading justice builds a false sense of invincibility. They'll appear, if only to watch Lisa react to their threats." Just then, her radio crackled softly. "Detective Jennings, this is Officer Bennett." Subject spotted. Male, mid-40s, hooded jacket, repeatedly pacing near trail entrance. Fits description. Luke's heart thudded painfully. Jennings immediately snapped into action. "Keep him under observation, Bennett. No moves until we confirm hostile intent." Silence settled over them again, thicker now with adrenaline. Minutes stretched painfully. Luke clenched his fists, heart hammering. Suddenly, movement caught Luke's attention. A man appeared below, walking slowly, methodically, stopping to glance down over the cliff's edge. His posture was careful, controlled. Luke squinted through his binoculars, breathing shallowly as recognition set in. "Wait, Detective, that's Jeff Palmer," Luke whispered urgently. "He manages the visitor center. My dad's known him for years." Jennings stiffened, eyes narrowing sharply. Palmer was mentioned in several old trail negligence reports. His name kept popping up quietly, but always disappeared before investigations proceeded. Luke felt nausea twist sharply in his stomach. Palmer had always been a friendly, familiar figure around town. Trusted, respected, completely above suspicion. Yet, watching him now, pacing deliberately, occasionally glancing back toward the woods behind him, Luke saw a different, sinister side. Palmer halted abruptly, pulling out his phone. Jennings signaled quickly to officers below. "Move in slowly. Observe carefully. Do not spook him." Luke's breathing quickened as officers discreetly approached from behind, blending into the landscape seamlessly. Palmer tensed suddenly, sensing something. He scanned the surroundings anxiously before quickly pocketing his phone, turning back toward the parking lot, steps quickening. "He knows," Luke hissed softly, panic rising sharply. Jennings barked in her radio. "Urgency clear. All units, move in now. Don't let him leave." Officers broke cover immediately, converging swiftly. Palmer bolted instantly, sprinting toward the parking lot. Jennings and Luke surged from their hiding place, rushing downhill. Palmer reached his car, fumbling with his keys in frantic desperation. "Police! Freeze!" Jennings shouted, pistol drawn steadily, voice booming clearly across the clearing. Palmer spun around, wild-eyed, trapped. His expression darkened rapidly from panic to cold resignation as officers closed in, cuffing him roughly against the vehicle's hood. Jennings approached, her voice fierce. "You're under arrest for suspicion of stalking and criminal harassment. We know about the threats. Where's Emily Carter?" Palmer's face contorted angrily, voice low and venomous. "You'll never prove anything." Luke stepped forward, voice trembling with barely controlled fury. "We found your notes, your surveillance equipment, your shack. It's over, Palmer. Palmer glared silently, rage smoldering behind his icy eyes, refusing to speak further. Officers led him roughly toward a waiting squad car, leaving Luke and Jennings standing breathlessly, hearts pounding with relief and lingering dread. Jennings glanced at Luke, her expression grim yet resolute. We got him, but Palmer's only a piece of this puzzle. He didn't act alone. Someone else, someone more powerful, is pulling strings behind the scenes. Luke nodded soberly, eyes fixed on the cliffs where Emily vanished. Then it's not finished. Not until Emily's home, and every truth exposed. Late evening shadows stretched ominously across the deserted cliff trail, mingling uneasily with the pale glow of moonlight filtering through thick clouds. Luke, restless and driven by an unbearable need for answers, paced slowly near the trail's edge. Officially, the investigation had stalled again. Detective Jennings urged patience, but Luke couldn't stand idle. Every moment without Emily felt unbearable. Suddenly, movement caught Luke's peripheral vision, a shadowy figure standing silently just beyond the tree line, watching him intently. A chill surged through Luke, but determination quickly overtook fear. Ignoring Jennings' repeated warnings echoing in his head, he approached cautiously. "Who's there?" Luke demanded loudly, voice taut with tension. "Show yourself." The figure stepped back swiftly, vanishing deeper into the darkness. Luke felt desperation override his caution. He lunged forward, chasing the stranger into the dense woods. Branches whipped harshly at his face, scraping painfully against skin, yet he pressed forward relentlessly, adrenaline surging. "Stop!" he shouted, pulse thundering violently. "You're not getting away." Abruptly, Luke broke through into a small clearing and froze. The figure stood waiting, hood obscuring his features. Luke took a careful step forward, heart hammering. "Who are you? What do you know about Emily?" The man didn't speak. Instead, he lunged violently forward, catching Luke completely off guard. A sudden, sharp pain erupted as the attacker's fist connected brutally with Luke's jaw, sending him sprawling backward onto wet earth. Before he could react, powerful hands seized him roughly, slamming him down again, knocking the breath painfully from his lungs. "Stay out of it," the man growled harshly, his voice distorted by rage and fear. "Forget your sister. Forget everything, or you'll vanish too." Luke struggled desperately, vision blurred, gasping for breath. "Where is Emily?" he choked defiantly. The attacker's grip tightened violently, pinning Luke down. "She dug too deep. Just like you. People who dig don't come back." Summoning every ounce of strength, Luke twisted suddenly, wrenching free momentarily. He scrambled backward frantically, heart pounding, adrenaline pushing through searing pain. The man lunged again, missing narrowly. Luke staggered upward, fleeing desperately toward the faint moonlight illuminating the trail. Branches tore viciously at his clothes, his skin. Finally, he burst from the trees, stumbling heavily onto the trail. Panting, bleeding, he heard the attacker stop at the tree line behind him, then retreat rapidly into darkness. Barely conscious, Luke collapsed onto the gravel path, vision swimming. Through a haze, distant flashing lights approached, accompanied by urgent voices. Moments later, Detective Jennings' face appeared, filled with worry and frustration. "Luke, can you hear me?" Jennings demanded sharply, kneeling beside him. Luke nodded weakly, pain radiating through his battered body. Paramedics quickly arrived, lifting him onto a stretcher. As he was carried away, Jennings stayed close, concern softening her usually stern expression. In the sterile quiet of the hospital room, hours later, Luke stirred painfully awake, battered but alive. Jennings stood silently by the window, her expression unreadable as she turned toward him. "You're incredibly lucky, Luke," she began firmly, irritation clear in her voice. "Or incredibly reckless. Probably both. You could have been killed confronting someone alone like that." Luke grimaced slightly, stubbornness blazing defiantly through lingering pain. "He knows where Emily is. He admitted it. She's alive, Sarah. I'm sure of it." Jennings sighed deeply, shaking her head, frustration warring with reluctant admiration. "You're brave, Luke. Reckless, but brave. But next time, trust me enough to ask for help. Luke met her gaze fiercely, determination hardening despite his battered state. Promise me you won't stop. Whatever happens to me, keep pushing. Emily deserves the truth. Jennings nodded solemnly, a rare tenderness breaking through her hardened exterior. We'll find her, Luke. But let us help. You've done enough on your own. Luke sat upright in his hospital bed, pale daylight streaming through the half-open blinds, washing over the bruises that still darkened his face. Emily's belongings, recovered from her room, lay scattered gently across his bedside table. He reached for her journal, fingers tracing the familiar handwriting that felt painfully close, yet heartbreakingly distant. As Luke thumbed through the pages, a small folded envelope slipped out, falling softly onto the sheets. Curious, he unfolded it, revealing a letter in Emily's precise, urgent handwriting. His pulse quickened as he read. Dear Luke, if you're reading this, something's probably gone terribly wrong. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I didn't want to put you at risk. I found proof, Luke, undeniable proof of corruption in this town. Prominent people, including Jeff Palmer, members of the town council, and even Dad, were involved in covering up negligence around the cliff trails. People died because they prioritized profit over safety and then hid the evidence. I wanted justice for the victims. I was going to expose everything publicly. I have records, statements, emails, all hidden safely. But someone found out, and now I'm scared. Please, if something happens, find these records. Tell Detective Jennings everything. She's one of the few people in town I think we can trust. Forgive me for not confiding sooner. I love you always. Emily. Luke's hand shook as he reread the letter, heart pounding painfully. Emily had known everything. She'd been willing to risk herself, had risked everything, to bring justice to victims of decades-long neglect. And now she'd paid the highest price for bravery. He immediately called Detective Jennings, who arrived shortly after, carefully examining the letter in silence. Her expression darkened with every word, anger flickering behind her controlled professionalism. Luke leaned forward, ignoring the ache of his injuries. Emily said she hid records, evidence. We need to find it. Jennings nodded grimly, determination set in her features. We will, but we must move carefully. These are influential people. We accuse them without solid proof, and they'll bury this again, permanently. Luke's eyes burned fiercely. Emily risked everything to expose this corruption. We owe it to her and every victim to finish what she started. Jennings' gaze softened slightly, admiration and empathy breaking through her stern facade. We'll find her evidence, Luke. We'll finish this together. Luke glanced back down at Emily's heartfelt letter, grief and pride mixing painfully. She knew she was risking everything, but she couldn't stay silent. Your sister's courage is rare, Jennings replied quietly, standing to leave. Now it's our turn to match it. As Jennings stepped outside, Luke carefully folded Emily's letter, clutching it tightly. Emily had fought alone, fearless in pursuit of justice, even knowing the danger. Her sacrifice wouldn't be meaningless. The police cruisers, lights flashing violently, painted the quiet neighborhood in hues of red and blue. Neighbors gathered anxiously, murmuring in disbelief as officers burst through the front door of Councilman Richard Hale's expansive home. Detective Jennings led the raid, focused, relentless, and determined. Luke stood nearby, watching from behind police tape, his heart racing with anxiety and cautious hope. Moments later, Jennings emerged carrying sealed evidence bags, her expression grimly triumphant. She approached Luke quickly, her voice low but sharp with urgency. We got him, Luke. Hale's been deeply involved from the start. Threatening emails, surveillance files, detailed notes on each victim. It's all here. He masterminded everything. Luke exhaled shakily, relief mingled painfully with lingering dread. But what about Emily? Jennings hesitated, sadness briefly breaking through her professional mask. Nothing concrete yet, but Hale clearly orchestrated the disappearances. If Emily's alive, Hale knows exactly where. Police led Hale roughly out of his home, his normally composed face now pale, defiant, eyes burning with silent fury as handcuffs clicked sharply around his wrists. Luke watched numbly, anger and fear swirling chaotically inside him. Later that night, at the precinct, Jennings laid out evidence across the interrogation room table. Hale sat opposite her, expression cold and unyielding. Jennings' voice was calm, yet unrelenting. "We found everything, Richard. Threatening messages to multiple victims, detailed records of stalking, and payments made to silence witnesses. It's over." Hale leaned forward, voice dangerously soft. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. Accuse me publicly, and you'll regret it." Jennings didn't flinch, eyes steady and fierce. "You underestimated Emily Carter. Her evidence, combined with what we found tonight, is enough to bury you. But it's not too late. Tell me where Emily is." Hale's expression flickered briefly, revealing something dark and vulnerable beneath his controlled exterior. Then he clamped his jaw shut, refusing to speak further. Hours passed, but Hale remained stubbornly silent. Luke sat outside the interrogation room, emotionally drained, grief and frustration building unbearably. Jennings emerged quietly, exhaustion evident. "He won't break," she admitted reluctantly. "But his silence says more than his words. Hale's hiding something significant." Luke rubbed his temples, eyes burning with fatigue and anger. "You think Emily's still alive?" Jennings nodded slowly. "Hale's careful. If he intended to kill her immediately, we'd have found evidence already. He might be holding her, bargaining power, leverage in case everything unraveled." Luke swallowed hard, hope flickering cautiously within him. "Then we keep searching. Every second counts." Jennings rested a comforting hand briefly on Luke's shoulder. "We won't stop. If Emily's alive, we'll find her. Hale's arrest is just the first step." Exhausted and drained from days without sleep, Luke paced restlessly through the police precinct, his mind racing furiously for answers. Jennings sat across from him, studying detailed maps and notes, desperately trying to find anything they'd overlooked. Suddenly, Luke froze, a memory hitting him with startling clarity. "Wait, Sarah," he said urgently. "The coastal bunker, the one Emily and I explored as kids. It's hidden, practically forgotten. She knew about it, maybe even better than I did. If Hale wanted to hide her, there's no better place." Jennings looked up sharply, instantly alert. "Are you certain?" Luke nodded emphatically, hope swelling painfully in his chest. "It's isolated and forgotten. No one goes there. She mentioned it recently, a couple weeks ago, asking if I remember the way inside. I didn't think about it until now, but maybe—" Jennings stood abruptly, grabbing her radio and keys. "Then that's exactly where we're going." Within minutes, a convoy of squad cars raced toward the rugged coastline, lights flashing urgently, casting frantic beams into the pre-dawn darkness. Luke's heart thundered in his chest, hope battling desperately against gnawing dread. They reached the cliffside at first light, a pale mist blanketing the jagged rocks below. Jennings and Luke led officers quickly toward the hidden entrance, a rusted metal door concealed behind overgrown bushes, exactly as Luke remembered from childhood adventures. Jennings gave the signal. Officers pried the door open, revealing a steep, narrow stairwell descending into darkness. Flashlights illuminated peeling walls and scattered debris as they cautiously moved downward, every sound amplified painfully by Luke's strained senses. "Emily!" Luke shouted, his voice cracking with raw desperation. "Emily, are you here?" Silence stretched unbearably until a faint, weak voice echoed softly from deep within. "Luke!" Heart surging, Luke rushed forward, Jennings right beside him, beams of light slicing frantically through the darkness. They reached a locked interior door. Jennings forced it open, revealing a small, dimly lit room. Emily sat huddled in a corner, pale, bruised, eyes wide with exhaustion, yet shimmering defiantly with life. Her hands clutched tightly at a small box, her body trembling with the effort it took to hold on to it. Luke fell to his knees beside her, tears stinging his eyes. "Emily, oh my God, you're alive." Weakly, Emily reached for him, breaking into sobs of relief and exhaustion. "I knew you'd find me," she whispered hoarsely. "I knew you wouldn't stop." Jennings gently helped Emily upright, eyes softening with rare tenderness. "You're incredibly brave, Emily. Whatever evidence you found, It might finally end this. Emily shakily handed over the small box, meeting Jennings' gaze steadily despite her exhaustion. It's everything. The file's Hale was desperate to destroy. Records, photos, messages. He was willing to kill me to keep these hidden. Luke embraced her tightly, overcome with relief and pride. You risked everything, Em. Emily's voice shook, eyes glistening. I had to. All those people. Someone had to speak for them. They deserved justice, not silence. Jennings held the box carefully, determination stealing her voice. You've done more than enough. Now let us finish it. Outside, as sunlight finally broke across the horizon, Emily clung tightly to Luke, breathing in the fresh, crisp air she'd feared she'd never experience again. Tears of relief flowed freely, washing away the lingering darkness of captivity. Luke held her protectively, heart swelling with fierce admiration. Emily had been through unimaginable darkness and pain, yet had emerged stronger, unbroken, a hero whose bravery had exposed decades of corruption. In the days following Emily's dramatic rescue, the town reeled under the crushing weight of revelations that shattered decades of comfortable silence. The evidence Emily had courageously guarded was now laid bare, exposing not only Councilman Hale's ruthless orchestrations, but implicating several other prominent citizens who had concealed negligence for years. Headlines screamed accusations, reporters swarmed streets, and the once tranquil community faced an unprecedented reckoning. In the quiet warmth of their childhood home, Luke and Emily sat together, watching their parents struggle openly with their roles in the dark past. Michael Carter appeared visibly humbled, shoulders heavy with guilt, yet finally facing accountability. I can't change what I've done, Michael said, voice shaking. But I promise transparency now, full cooperation, no matter what consequences come. Our family, our town, can't heal until everything is brought into the light. Emily nodded quietly, her eyes reflecting forgiveness but tempered by lingering sadness. I know you didn't intend harm, Dad, but silence costs lives. No one should ever be collateral damage to secrecy or greed. Their mother, Susan, squeezed Emily's hand gently. We'll make sure no one forgets the truth again. You've shown us bravery. Emily, we'll follow your example. Outside, the community gathered for a vigil near the cliff trail, candles flickering softly against the gathering twilight, their glow symbolizing truth emerging from darkness. Survivors' families and townspeople alike stood united, solemnly pledging never to forget, vowing to honor victims lost in negligence and corruption. Detective Jennings addressed the crowd, her voice strong and resolute. Justice delayed is justice denied. But today, justice has finally arrived. We owe that to Emily Carter's courage and resilience. Now it's our responsibility to ensure transparency, accountability, and healing. As applause echoed through the evening air, Luke glanced at Emily, whose eyes brimmed gently with tears, a quiet pride evident in her soft smile. She squeezed his hand reassuringly, whispering, "We did it." Later that night, Luke and Emily returned to the cliffs, standing silently at the trail's edge beneath a canopy of stars. The ocean whispered softly below, its waves soothing yet powerful, a reminder of nature's beauty and inherent danger. Emily breathed deeply, closing her eyes briefly, absorbing the fragile, precious freedom she'd nearly lost. I never thought I'd be here again, she murmured softly. Luke wrapped an arm protectively around her shoulder. Your strength brought you back. You fought when no one else would. Emily leaned into him, voice gentle yet determined. I survived because I knew you wouldn't give up. It's strange. The worst experiences teach us so clearly how fragile life is, how brave we can become when forced to confront darkness. Luke nodded solemnly. It's resilience we never knew we had until tested. Courage isn't about not feeling fear. It's fighting despite it. They stood quietly, united by trauma, yet strengthened by survival, reflecting deeply on everything lost and gained. Their bond, once familiar and easy, had grown profoundly deeper through shared pain and courage. In the darkness, Emily's voice rose softly, filled with newfound strength. No one can undo the past, But maybe our story can inspire others, give courage to those afraid of facing powerful lies. Luke tightened his embrace gently, feeling gratitude mixed poignantly with lingering sadness. Then let that be our legacy. Truth always matters, no matter the cost. Beneath the endless stars, the siblings stood side by side, forever changed yet unwaveringly resilient. Their harrowing journey had ended, but its lessons would remain eternally. Courage in the face of darkness, resilience amid loss, and the fierce, precious fragility of life itself. Enjoyed the story? Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and let us know your thoughts about the ending in the comments. Your support helps us create more deep and gripping stories just for you. There's more to come.